Another of Washington's pastors was the Reverend James Abercrombie, who was also sought for an understanding of what George Washington believed. It was Abercrombie who had confronted Washington about turning his back on the Lord's Supper. We read that, long after Washington's death, in reply to Dr. Wilson, who had interrogated him as to his religious views, Dr. Abercrombie's brief but emphatic answer was, "Sir, Washington was a deist." To me, the most disturbing part about George Washington is that in the diary of Thomas Jefferson, it is recorded that before George Washington left office as President of the United States, that the clergymen in Philadelphia, which is where Washington was president, that they wanted him to make a public confession of his faith as a Christian. And they wanted to do this for posterity's sake. In his diary, Thomas Jefferson wrote, February 1st, Dr. Rush tells me that he had it from Asa Green that when the clergy addressed General Washington on his departure from the government, it was observed in their consultation that he had never on any occasion said a word to the public which showed a belief in the Christian religion. And they thought they should so pen their address as to force him at length to declare publicly whether he was a Christian or not. They did so. However, he observed, the old fox was too cunning for them. He answered every article in their address particularly, except that, which he passed over without notice. I know that Governor Morris has often told me that General Washington believed no more in the system, Christianity, than he did. And so we read about this in Thomas Jefferson's diary, and then we find it again in an account given by a relative of Dr. Ashbel Green. And again, Dr. Ashbel Green was the congressional chaplain for the 8 years that Washington served as president.
But America's most important founding Freemason was none other than George Washington.
The fact that Washington is a Freemason is of enormous significance. George Washington joined, even when he was just 20 years old, so anxious was he to join the fraternity.
Another important and rarely discussed influence on the founders was their addiction to mind-altering substances.
Well, it's important to understand that in the 18th century, drinking water could be downright dangerous, and it might actually kill you because of the parasites that were in tainted water supplies. So it's not unreasonable to think that the big ideas and the kind of revolutionary fervor that emerges out of secret meetings that are plied with alcohol was fed by booze.
I think that the founding fathers must have been stoned and plastered during that whole...
But within hours, the British would be at the doorstep of the house she had transformed into the center of Washington society. She receives word from her husband, who's out rallying troops. Evacuate the White House. As the desperate minutes dwindle, Dolly Madison heads for a national treasure.
This is a woman who, at the risk of her life, while the British are advancing on Washington and the male guards have fled from around the White House, this lady decides to save George Washington's portrait, painted by Gilbert Stuart, for the single reason that it has to be protected and saved for future generations. Which one of us, male or female today, would risk our lives for a painting? And she did that.
I insist on waiting till the large picture of General Washington is taken, so I have ordered the frame to be broken and the painting taken out. It is done.
The First Lady is among the last to evacuate the city. She finally boards her carriage, searching for her husband. By 8 p.m., British forces, led by Major General Ross, enter Washington.
Above the roof of the world.
Has the world got a roof?
Of course, supported by 7 pillars. And the 7 pillars are set on the shoulders of a genie whose strength is beyond thought. And the genie stands on an eagle, and the eagle on a bull, and the bull on a fish, and the fish swims in the sea of eternity. On the highest peak of the highest mountain of the world, where earth meets the sky. And there is the Temple of the Dawn. And in the great hall of the temple is the goddess of light. And in the head of the goddess is the all-seeing eye.
Monument. Oveson writes that in 1848, when the cornerstone of the Washington Monument was laid, the sun would have passed over Sirius. He goes on to say that in the course of the ceremonial, the star Sirius would have been seen on the eastern horizon. It would have been rising over the Capitol building to the east of the monument.
I am the keeper of the dream, freedom for all. My mighty hands hold both strength and peace in balance. I am rooted firmly in justice, e pluribus unum, out of many, one.